Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. Now, there's a lot of people who don't want me to spell out things, but I have to put God first. I'm not a black supremacist. I am a moral supremacist. I put morality first. I put God first in reality and not in any church conception. Okay, and part of what this person, Joseph Jones, in this video I've seen recently, I've seen part of it, and I couldn't wait to make this video because the part I saw was enough to kind of start speaking on it. And then I'll probably see the rest of it. I'm going to see the rest of it at some point if I'm still alive. And then I'll probably speak on that as well. So he basically said that America has a long history of isolating black doctors. They don't want black people to have positions of respect. Okay, and I do believe this person is controlled opposition, right? You know, I've never come across anyone who strikes me as uncontrolled opposition. It's just me. And that's important to note. However, I do believe the things that he's saying are basically true. He talks about how he's a victim of workplace bullying in the Army, okay, and he looks like an LGBT gentleman, and, you know, I decided I'd point that out because one of the major factors out there are the LGBT community. You know, they're a major factor in politics, and that factors in. So basically he says he wasn't being promoted because he's black, and then eventually he had to terminate his relationship with the Army, and they're persecuting him. He brings up workplace bullying, and he talks about the group psychology of it, okay, and he says that it's complex, and I agree. There's a lot of complexity to it, and people like to say things like, what's going on? You know, as if it's a simple question with a simple answer. But what's going on is actually a complicated question for many reasons, and the answer is complicated. What's going on is like trying to explain, you know, rocket scientist in layman's terms to a child. That's part of what's going on. It's complex. It's hard to explain. And what's going on is like it's a control freak image campaign. There's racism going on, but what exactly is going on is a bit more complex than that, right? It's not as simple as they're white or they're Jewish or they're LGBT and they're bullying people. You know, it's not as simple as that they're conservatives and you know, someone's a Democrat or something. What's going on is like what goes on behind the scenes in the government, okay? There's a lot of family-based interests, and they've bred a lot of people, okay? It's an alliance of lots of families and their allies, and they're trying to control things, and their core lines are white, Jewish, and LGBT, okay? Most of the people from their races and groups, almost certainly, they must not approve of what they're doing because they have hard lives, right? There's a lot of poor whites, Jews, and LGBT ladies and gentlemen out there who have suffered a lot due to this process, okay? And I'm not trying to take away from that fact, that irrefutable fact, but I'm trying to help you understand what's going on here, okay? So this isn't the first time I've come across a video by a black physician who says that they're giving him a hard time. You know, I'm not familiar with all the processes of medical school, but he was talking about a word I've heard my parents use before, the residency. And he was talking about how if you're a woman and you go to some sort of training, that you're you know, twice as likely as a white male. A white woman is twice as likely as a white male to not make it through that training, that process. Okay. And if you're black, male or female, you're 8 times less likely. Now, these are people who are smart enough to go out and try to be doctors and try to train, etc., etc. Okay, to make a long story short, the numbers do not make sense. It's not as simple as, hey, you know, black people aren't qualified or white women aren't qualified. It's not that simple. The fact of the matter is, if the system was fair and there wasn't workplace bullying and sabotage going on, that these people almost certainly would complete the process at the same rate as white males. That's the bottom line. For example, if you saw every Asian person, every black person, every Hispanic person, every white person, a male and female who got all A's or A's and B's at every school, okay, would you say, hey, only the white males are likely to make it through this training process and become a doctor? Okay, that is pretty ridiculous, right? Okay, and so the numbers don't make sense. So when he presented it, it was like with that understanding that everyone would see it that way, but it's a little more complicated than that. People might think, hey, that's affirmative action for you, but it's not that simple. That's not what happened. Okay. Now keep in mind, I'm the son of 2 doctors. My dad and my family are persecuted, but they're persecuted because of me, not because of him marrying my mother. Okay? Only in the sense that he's not from their social clubs. He's not from their groupings. Okay? He's from Nigeria. He married a white woman. He has humanitarian awards. He's humanitarian. And that he brought me into the world. Okay? And he's not from their family alliance. And I'm not going to, pretend anything. I'm not going to lie about this thing. There's lots of people want me to lie and to fall in line with some Luciferian order, which is what it is. Whether they worship Lucifer, or not, they take on that mentality of lying and trying to put people beneath them like some sick slave master in a social club or something. It's very, very sick. So why are they targeting me is a huge part of this. It's the most important thing going on, and I'm not going to magically pretend that that's magically not the case, right? That's stupid. The reason why I'm persecuted is because I have the most logical interpretation of who Christ is in the Bible, okay? And the idea of Christ is superimposed, the idea of Christ returning is superimposed on me, and I'm the top martial artist ever possible using universal logic. This is not some speculation, or this is not a theory. These are the facts. The fact of the matter is that there is not a more logical interpretation of why the Bible is written and who Christ is in reality. Okay? My interpretation is the most logical. And immediately that puts me at odds with more than just Christians, Muslims, and Jews, with every group. There's a bunch of atheists who don't like people who are religious and deep. There's a bunch of shallow Christians who don't like people who are deep. Okay? There's a bunch of people in the churches, mosques, and synagogues and religious movements that like to pretend that they're the experts on things and they want you to think that they know better than a soul brother who's the top martial artist ever possible. Okay? Which everyone immediately would think is outrageous. Okay, for example, Flanders from The Simpsons says, I know better than the top martial artist about God, even though he's this profound, righteous guy. Okay, and he plays stupid about the scriptures that show that I'm right. You're not going to believe him, right? You're going to be like, well, fuck you talking about? You're more likely to believe that Harry Potter could knock out Mike Tyson in his prime fair and square than you are to believe that someone else is more righteous and holy than I am when you're presented with the facts in 5 minutes or less. Okay? Especially if they're not changing my voice and so on and so forth. So it's clear. Okay, I don't care if I'm tortured for the rest of my life. I'm going to put God first. Okay, I'm not going to lie about things so that they take it easy on me. That's out of the question. Period. I don't for the life of me understand why people don't understand that life is short. It is pathetic. It is extremely pathetic, the essence of pathetic, to turn your back on God and I, okay, period. But then life is short too, and it's a pain, and you should resent your oppressors. So when we look at this guy's story, right, which is nothing compared to mine, though I'm not trying to take away from his story, but because they're trying to make people like him the center of attention, okay, because he's rolling with the LGBT agenda, and I'm not trying to insult him, okay, I'm sure he has been through a hard time. And if he, if I'm right about that, we'll say to be diplomatic, okay, about the LGBT thing. Okay, I'm sure that he doesn't approve of what they're doing, but he doesn't know what to do with himself, which is also his argument about why he stayed in the army for like a decade after they were treating him that way, because society doesn't allow you to have opportunities, okay? And then they want to take you to the psych ward, okay, if they don't like the way you think, and people likely, and when they look at all that, they're likely to want to die, and then they're likely to take you to psych ward at any sign that you're going to commit suicide as well. So when we look at this situation, it's clear, okay? What's going on is monstrous. Everyone basically admits the politics, especially in California, are extremely corrupt and someone needs to do something, but they don't do anything, and they're playing into their hand. When we see that pattern, it would be very foolish of me to act like that's not what's going on in this African-American gentleman's case. His name is Joseph Jones, if I'm not mistaken. So we see yet another example of why the overwhelmingly logical assumption and sound conclusion for people who are watching my videos is that A, I'm being persecuted, And B, law enforcement is supposed to do something about it, but they're not. Which means C, I'm owed a lot of money. It also means D, while I'm owed a lot of money, there's a bunch of gold diggers that won't date me because I don't have a lot of money. Which goes to E, well, why are you concerned about that, right? Because this society is a capitalist, hyper-consumer society. And I'm not a communist. I am not a communist. But this is a hyper-consumer, materialistic society. And therefore, all the attractive females are gold diggers, okay? And those who aren't, they're going through the motions of being gold diggers. So they're still gold diggers in that sense. You see what I'm saying? And they're scared, right? So they're all either gold diggers in their heart, or they're people who are scared into behaving like gold diggers. Okay? So it's a mix between someone threatening them and me not having a lot of money, that I'm being shunned. Okay? And I've been looking for love on the internet and in person for like 3 decades, since I was like 11 years old, 12 years old. Okay? On AOL and GeoCities. And, you know, going to the parks and malls and clubs and get-togethers and on and on and on. I know this for sure. California is the most populated state in one of the most populated countries in the world. Look it up. What I just said to you right there is like harder to believe than the rest of the stuff I'm saying, because it's so obvious that I'm right.